have to hit a go live button. Oh, okay. It started. You're live. All right. It's very interesting. I am not 100% sure how this scheduling stuff works, so I will start out here looking at the YouTube interface for the scheduled live stream. I figured it has been going so well. Okay, this is journaling stuff, right? That's where I started out, right? So we go over here. It's arranged a little bit differently because I want chat here, and that was one of my recent innovations. I should have Karnak running. So as I do ampersand J to create a new entry, you should have seen Karnak come up. Is it running? I need to make sure it's running. Maybe I quit out of it and then run it from this screen so that my keys are definitely showing on the screen. It's definitely a great feature. So hello, everyone. Okay, yeah, that's good. I'll squeeze this in a little bit, and I'll squeeze that out a bit. That all looks very good. It has been suggested to me. I got to make sure I get my names right. I go to the next journal. And I have an entry set up for publishing, but this nice one from yesterday, it has been suggested to me, I believe it was by Otto von Bismarck, that I might like to use Power Toys. And Power Toys would let me do this sort of arrangement much more easily. And I'm coming around to that. I'm warming up to it. But for this live cast, I wanted to start out in my B1, my private journal. And hello, everyone in my private journal. This is where I'm going to think things through, and you'll see me move things from left to right. Let's introduce the nice people to the whole reason I found my way to Linux, Python, Vim, and Git. I'm a general tech person, but I never took the plunge into these on the hook tech jobs. Like the big one these days is DevOps, developer operations, which used to be, I don't know, sysadmin, network admin. And these all got wrapped up into kind of the label of DevOps because people got used to saying that all the time. So these are words my spell checker should be recognizing, so I add them to my spell checker. And so in getting started with SEO, this should be a headline and a subhead because of the way this all works. Getting started with SEO means Python. I'm just going to say it right out. It means Python. And then I'm going to say a few things here. We will, in this session, pip install -u, capital U, or minus upgrade. I know it's at least -u, that'll work. So ML SEO, but don't do it right away. I'm going to be updating the library with you, and that's why the -u. It's not quite ready for prime time, but that's one of the things we're going to be working towards. But it's more important to do local persistent dictionaries. So this is the big trick. That's the big trick for getting started, because it applies to everything. I guess another subpoint, it applies to all data collection phases of a project because key value is fast and defers row and column decisions. Does this sound weird? Does this sound weird to you? Okay. So the thing that I have to explain about any weirdness that's going on here is that, you know, so much of SEO and other fields all projects start with a data collection phase. It's just a fact. The better you can do this under Python, the better of an SEO you will be, and the less you will have to pay for specialized products. Okay, so that's the reason we're starting out this way. Now, I started in my private journal, and when I'm typing something and it starts to be like clearly something I want for the public, I highlight it, I yank it, I jump to the journal. Well, I'll do a save. It's always good to save. And then I'll jump to the journal where I know I want to do the publishing. That's actually B2. And then I do my keyboard shortcut for creating a new entry. And then I get out of insert mode, and then I paste what I just typed. And I try and match it to the topic. You know, I'm streaming for you. Some people are tuned in. You can start to type to me, by the way. This kind of stuff, I really want to see the interaction. But I will use the same title as I'm using on the stream. This is one of the rules of SEO right off the bat. That is, line up your crosshairs. No single page can target too many keywords. You should have some keyword research going into it, but I didn't, because I publish so much. I take sort of a scatter approach at times. And I also wrote something in the past. It's no longer out there, but it's called Hittail. But after taking a sort of scatter approach, feeling things out, you'll start to collect data. So, you know, ready, publish, aim. You need to be able to ready, publish, aim in order to collect some data of your own. On a website you control. The data coming in will include 1. You crawling the site as if Google. Now, anyone can do that to any site. That's what we're really going to be beginning with here. And it's non-proprietary data. Anyone can crawl any site. That's the way the Google web crawler works. It's nothing special about it, really. It's quite easy a project and a good place to get started. And right off the bat, it'll keep you from about $100 a year charge you'll have for something called Screaming Frog, right? That is the tool that we're making unnecessary if you get good at this. And then the next thing is, Otto's there. Hi there. Hello. How much the title matter overall? Yeah, the title matters a lot. So the second thing is going to be Google Analytics. And the third thing is going to be Google Search Console. There's other sources of data, but when you run and own a site, you're going to have access to your own Google Analytics and Google Search Console, and other people won't. So I'll go back to that lining up the crosshairs concept. Right? So when you line up the crosshairs, you choose your target keyword 2 to 5 words. And then you make sure it occurs in that exact word arrangement in your title. Most important. If you don't put your targeted term in the exact word arrangement you're targeting in your title, you're not going to get the search hit. The competition is just too great. So, 80-20 rule, 80% of your targeting has taken place by putting it in the title tag. It doesn't mean it's going to perform well. But now you line up your crosshairs by making sure that exact word arrangement also occurs in your URL. The hardest one to do. It's the hardest one. Important, but most difficult. Okay? The third place is in a headline-like element. And it should be said on page, because all three of these things so far have been what's called on-page criteria. And then the fourth location, and I'll answer you in a moment there, Otto, is in the anchor text of links leading to the page. href equals, quote, quote, stuff goes in there, close quote, anchor text, close anchor. This is anchor text. Whoops. Okay. At Google I/O, they talked about their algo that does a summary of a page or document that you have read, the whole thing. I bet they use something similar for indexing. Okay, so there is an old way in which the crosshairs I discuss is everything. It still lurks beneath the surface of Google's systems. There is a new way that uses machine learning, particularly the BERT algorithm, that makes the crosshairs less important. But because of competitive reasons, this only comes into effect where the keywords get get long and specific. So you see, i.e. sentences. Bert reads sentences. Bert knows intent. And synonyms and language syntax. And learns, right? So it gets better over time. So there's an old way and a new way, and the new way is quite important. You can't ignore the fact that Google's getting smarter. Google's getting smarter. And the stuff they talk about at the I/O conference, they of course focus on that. We used to call it brain rank. Before brain rank, there was page rank, which was really a machine learning thing of a sort. Page rank became brain rank. Before that, there was universal, which was just different data types. And then the brain rank, and now there's a lot of talk about BERT, and it will always improve until general artificial intelligence arises, right? That's where we're going. We're just seeing Google's child grow up, and we're along for the ride. This is one of the reasons I'm staying in this friggin' field of SEO. I want to see the general AIs, the GAIs. I want to see the GAIs, wake up. You may be talking with them already. Okay, how might you be talking to them already? Well, that gets to the next part of this. You need to publish. You need to start publishing and collecting data. This is why when I do my analysis for the day, right, I start out with what's most broken, where do I get the biggest bang for the buck. I hope this translates to these other languages of the people tuning in. And then finally, what plates need spinning, right? So these are the three metaphors. I'll highlight those and do the center, make them look a little different from the things. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of publishing. In fact, to make that published correctly, I'm going to throw a pre-tag in there, and I'm going to throw a end pre-tag here and give you a little before and after of the publishing going out. I'm an expert at SEO. My blog averaged 300 views monthly. That's great. You know, you're way ahead of me. I don't have 300 blogs monthly. That's because of what was most broken. I wasn't doing active publishing. I wasn't pushing stuff out. So, you know, what was most broken is that I was not keeping tension in the machinery. Publish often. Publish on slightly tangential topics. Tangential, but clusterable topics. I'm just going to leave it at tangential topics. You publish often and you publish on slightly tangential topics, and you cast out a really big net, and then you watch the data come in. So here's my before and after. We go to one of the website pages, and I'll add a new tab, and I'll go to mikelev.in, and I'll switch over to the blog. And you can see my canceling Netflix thing from lunch break today. So I did this in my lunch break. You could have sat there and saw me do this. I cleaned it up a little bit. But then the very video that I was shooting in the live stream during my lunch break, I put into here. And so there's more crosshairs lining up. If you go to YouTube and you check out, see canceling Netflix and chill, T-Mobile offer, you'll find that my headline for the page is canceling Netflix and chill, T-Mobile offer. Now, as I move my mouse pointer over here, we can see one of the things that's most broken. That should have the same title tags. And I'm going to be fixing both my blog. So now that I'm publishing constantly, right? So I fixed the first most broken thing. The next most broken thing is that I didn't have a blog publishing system I was satisfied with. You know, I had to dumped WordPress for tech liability reasons. Had to replace it, did replace it with GitHub Pages, which is the Jekyll static site generator. So there's whole discussions here, and I've discussed them in other videos. I'm going to try and fast track this a little bit in the realm of SEO. Yeah, Linux is niche. Oh, retracted. You don't have to retract. Linux is niche. Niche is, well, Linux is actually less niche than you might think. You know, you remember Slashdot from back in the day? The sure way to get lots of attention is to talk about Linux. Back in the day especially. It's maybe a little bit less so now that so many non-geeks have come onto the internet and the web. The ratio of Linux to searches has gone much against the favor of Linux, but it used to be you could write about Linux and be ensured of getting lots of traffic. Not so much anymore. So my static site generator is what you see when you see me do ampersand G for generate or GitHub or whatever you want to call it. And then all this scrolls by. Well, I typed a few lines, only Linux niche went through. I got you, but keep it coming. I'll answer that stuff. But here's the before on my blog. I go to just the blog page, and you can see, as I was pointing out, the last thing was canceling Netflix and chill. Now you can already see the crosshairs, and just take note it's the top blog post here, because there's going to be 2 more appearing. And this is anchor text. This is anchor text not merely on this blog page leading to that, right? Because it's going to be diluted from all these other posts here. Oh, I have a post 1 without a headline. Oh, I know why that is. I added my to-do list at the bottom. So I've got a lot of refinement. This system is just being born to replace WordPress for me. It really is the Jekyll publishing system in GitHub Pages, but I'm putting my own special twist on it so that the crosshairs are lined up automatically. I click into this, and here is the page, but if I go to the previous page, here is that link there going to the next page, again, using the targeted keyword in anchor text leading to the page. As soon as it's no longer the newest page, and there's ones above it, let's try a Control-R. It hasn't occurred yet, but 2 more articles are going to pop up above it. And so then at that point, there will be a page before it and a page after it. See, right now it's only got the arrow keys in one direction to go to the page before it. But once the new posts are made, including the one you just saw me do in front of here, there's going to be a post before it and a post after it. And so it will get more links leading to it, because the page after it will have a previous arrow linking back to this. There it is. So I do a refresh. 1991 was an eventful year for tech. Well, you should read that. It was a very eventful year for tech. But it has a link leading to that previous page, canceling Netflix and chill, T-Mobile offer. And so the crosshairs are very lined up except for the title tag. And that's going to lead us to a very practical exercise here where I basically crawl my whole website. Okay. I think Google filters some lines, maybe the mistake to type WordPress.com on your message, right? Yeah, they're filtering out spam. You can imagine the defenses they're taking here against naughty words and stuff. And promotions, spam, people promoting stuff. WordPress is heavily promoted. So the crawl is something that really gets worked up to in a series of steps. Writing a crawler from scratch has a few things in it that would be beyond the scope of this immediately. But I'm going to just crawl a single page so that you can see the stuff about the page, even without my library, even without ML SEO. But GitHub Pages and the Jekyll system is a real gift. You can see the way I formatted this. I put the first pre offline because it's ambiguity reasons. I really want it to start formatting the next line after it. But closing a tag doesn't have the same limitation. You can have that in line and make sure things are really nice and tight. So when we go over here and we look at that page, and we do a refresh on it, there it is. See what happened there? It's pretty nice. It's pretty good. I mean, it runs off to the right a bit. The centering is using, I guess, the 80 column centering that I'm using while I type. Yeah, I went back from 65 to 80 column. I figured out I can just, control plus and minus to make the text smaller. I don't have to make the text wrapping compromised. Okay, so anyway, let's jump into some important stuff. I'm going to crawl this page just to show you that the title tag is not really what it needs to be. So I go view page source, and I can make that big, Control plus, and there it is, Mike Levin, and then bar, mikelev.in. And so this is coming from somewhere. This is coming from somewhere. And where it's coming from is markdown that you'll be able to see in a local directory I keep, right? Because you got to save things somewhere, right? So when you're using a static site generator, you have to keep the pre-generated, in other words, simple text, simple data somewhere. In this case, the data format is Markdown, and where I'm keeping it is in folders. Also known as, I should make that a macro, also known as directories. I mean, I know you, Otto, know all this stuff. Being an MCSE, you could probably school me in a lot of this stuff. However, for people joining in, you probably do need to have it made very clear that when I do stuff like this, I'll hit Windows E to get the Windows Explorer, and I'll start typing GitHub, which is always in my shortcuts as a location. And then I'll start typing, I can see it already. I'll start typing that, and it brings us into this location where all these files are kept. And this is where my old WordPress blog was exported to, which is why there's so many freaking files here. So the one that's responsible for these blog pages follows a very precise convention, a traditional way of working that the framework, conventions and frameworks, If you're talking too much about frameworks, you chose the wrong programming language. The programming language should be your framework. Python generally is. However, you really can't keep away from other frameworks and other conventions. And the one that's being used here are the conventions of a system called Jekyll. You can see now, right now, the battle of the browsers. I intended to start typing here, where it was going to be Google, but my cursor got moved down here, where it's going to be Bing, and you can't change it from being Bing. The browser wars are in full gear. Okay. Jekyll. Static Site Generator, SSG. Otherwise, you might get Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So you can transform your plain text into static web pages and blogs. This is how I'm publishing. Now, what you lose really by doing this through GitHub is you're losing your log files. There's really no way to get your log files, which can be very useful. But the trade-off is extremely worth it. Instead of log files, you can install Google Analytics, which I have done, and you can validate your site with Google so that you have access to your Search Console data, special data Google collects about your site related to how people searched in it and clicked through on the search results. Very useful stuff. And the conventions of which I speak are things like how stuff is arranged on the drive. Here's a directory structure. It's a very important page. So you put things in certain locations. And for posts, for blogging, you put things that follow this naming convention inside this directory. So if I wanted to see what was going on with that latest post, I go into Internet Explorer, I go into _posts, I can sort by date modified, putting the newest at the top, and then I could send it to something, I don't know, that you could appreciate here, because you're not Vim heads yet. I expect most of you who are going to be watching this, not send to, I guess it's open with. Open with is going to give you some simple choices. We want to look at more apps because I'm just going to pull it up in Notepad. There's no reason you can't look at Markdown in Notepad. Now, I'm tempted to show it to you in Vim, but I know when I do this stuff over there, it's a little bit mystifying. And this is definitely not the one I want to be looking at. Like lev.in, sort by date modified. Well, they're all generated at the very same time. So maybe I just really do want to sort by name and then put the newest one up top, post 63. You can see, post 66. You can see even though that when they're generated, they have different URLs, the naming convention I use still keeps them numerically ordered here. And that's because of something I wrote, right? So I'm using some code I wrote to drop files in location that abide by the conventions that Jekyll puts forth. All right, let's see if anyone is typing questions and stuff. Well, all right. I'll just keep going on my path, but feel free to chime in, Otto, or anyone else who's following along. So if you need to do some diagnostics about what's going on, you can just, surf into the source markdown files and open. Now I have a permalink there saying, well, oh yeah, the link is fine. It's the title that's not fine. So, it does in fact have a title. The title isn't being used for the title tag in the post. That's what's happening. So even though I set the title here in what's called front matter, it's part of the convention of Jekyll, which in turn uses the convention of something called YAML, YML files. What are they? I'm just learning that myself mostly. The official YAML website. It's better to go to Wikipedia. You always want an objective third-party view of what something is. It's commonly used for configuration files. It's human readable, and Python style uses both Python style indentation for nesting and a more compact format that uses dot for okay. Thus, JSON files are valid YML. So, all right. So it's just a way of creating configuration files that support hierarchical nesting. I'm clearly not using any hierarchical nesting because nothing's indented, but they could be. And when indenting occurs, it's creating a data structure much like a much more difficult to look at JSON file. Very little parsing is needed here. So the problem that's occurring is my title tag is not ending up in the file. Now, before fixing that, because this is what's most broken for me, right? I need to fix that. And it's also where I get the biggest bang for the buck. And there's the plates that need to be spun in anticipation of that is probably just showing you how to crawl a site and to make it persistent. Persistence is so important in Python dictionaries. So, Python lesson. I am going to go to my GitHub directory, add a new folder, call that folder practice 2, because I know I have a practice folder, go inside of it, make sure I'm inside of it, and then click this little plus thing. And that gives me the launcher. And when I say new Python file, it creates the untitled file inside the practice directory. So in case it's not entirely clear, get your butts on Jupyter Lab for easy interactive Python. So says a Vim head. All right. So Python dictionary, there's tons of ways to go about it, but I guess probably the easiest is to just maybe I can jump right into it. Adict square bracket arbitrary name equals arbitrary value. Boom. Adict is not defined. Okay, so we need one line above it because you can't go putting things inside something that doesn't exist. So adict equals the Python shorthand notation for an empty dictionary. Open, curly close. If it reminds you a little bit of JSON, it should, because now when you do that and then you show adict, that arbitrary name possesses that arbitrary value. To hit that point home, it's time to employ foo. It's always time to employ foo. Foo equals bar. And now when we show that adict down here, it could show it there, but I'm going to try and keep these things sequential. You now have two values in it, arbitrary name, colon, arbitrary value, comma, foo colon bar. And as with everything in Python, it's very easy to iterate through anything that is derived from a sequence data type. That is a list, a dictionary, or a tuple. So you can say for item in adict print item, and you'll get the keys. The keys are the things on the left of these name value pairs. And you think, oh, I thought I was going to be learning SEO. Well, stick with me. Dictionaries are the beginning of SEO because something is something. Key value pairs are everywhere and everything. So are lists and tuples, but we'll get to them later. That's why these are the three first-class data types of Python beyond integers and floats and strings, basic strings. So as in any programming language, Python has to decide how to deal with things like numeric values and string values, and they have fairly traditional ways of doing it. It's got some weirdness in it compared to other languages, but fairly traditional. However, they've got three other data types that need to be talked about right away, and the honorary fourth data type of the set, but they each correspond to a shorthand notation of creating new ones. So first of all, you got to see that there's this type command, so you can check what kind of type a thing is. Type adict, what kind of type is it? You can also use isInstance. IsInstance equals. Okay, well, I'm going to get to isInstance later. There's a better way to check a type, but I don't do it a lot. I just know it's better practice, but I'll get to it later. You can basically see that adict is a dict, and if you created a list following the pattern I created, that gets initialized, instantiated, whatever have you, with square brackets as opposed to the curly brackets. So a dictionary is more organic. It's more organic because you can have nesting and everything. So we use an organic looking curly brace. A list is much more like a slide rule, a dynamic slide rule with a square thing on the left and the right. So we initialize those with square brackets, and you can even check its type before there's any value in it. And then the third one is a tuple, which it gets created with a parenthesis, and similarly, you can check its type with type, and you'll see when your fingers aren't farting that its type is a tuple. So list, tuples, and dicts are the three primary data types of Python, and that's your crash course introduction. There's another one, but it doesn't have a shorthand notation, but it's called a set. So you can go a set equals, and then you have to use that in order to do it. And it's worth noting that if you were, so inclined, another dict could be set instead of initializing it with a curly brackets. All these shorthand notations, syntactic sugar they call it, has a verbose, real function name equivalent. So it's a dictionary too, right? So I'm just going to get rid of that. And in fact, as I get rid of stuff, because we don't really need to talk about any of those other things other than that first dictionary I set up that contains these values, an arbitrary name and a foo bar, it's still there. It still has those values. But if I were to go kernel, restart kernel, and clear all outputs, because it makes more sense to just blank the outputs. If I were to jump right to this one and run it, it's not going to run. Adict is not defined, much less having values in it. It is not persistent. So I'm going to start showing you maybe not the $1 million trick in SEO, but it's certainly the $100,000 trick. This will knock you up to the next pay grade. Let's see if there's any comments or feedback before I go. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of beating around the bush. Let's make sure I'm still streaming. Make sure I didn't lose everybody. Maybe, oh, look at all the people who are here. All right, this next thing, nobody's going to tell you. And it's very hard to get to. And it's so fundamental to everything you do. Now let's start with a little channeling. Let's start with a little putting it in a broader perspective, because it's so easy for people like me who have it in their fingers to just jump in and assume all kinds of knowledge on your part that you don't necessarily have. So I'm just going to let it flow as if I'm doing poetry. You've heard me talking about going into a fugue state and the rhymes and the poetry just start coming. I'm going to know what you need to know. There is data. Data is out there. It is not yet here. You know, your job is to get the data from there to here. There are many ways to do this. Banking it fast with a key value system is best. Think not about rows and columns. It will slow you down. Key value systems today are faster than you think. This is because of hash something called. You don't need to really get it right now because of something called, right? Keep it in the abstract. You don't really have to know the details yet. Hash table optimization. The good folks need to know quite how fundamental hash table optimization, I'll just use the abbreviation for now, is core to everything. It's core to much. Okay, to see how true that is, we're going to look at the Python built-ins for just a moment. Whenever something is built into Python, it is there and available for immediate use. A built-in is something like the print function. I mean, you're not going to not have the print function. There's Python hello world right there, right? You don't even need to run that stuff above it to have a print function like hello world. And I could probably struggle and figure out how to show you the built-ins from within Jupyter Lab. I mean, there's probably a built-ins function or importing, but then it brings up too many other issues. I don't want to do it. Python built-ins. I just want to show you a page that lists the built-ins so I can make a point about what's built in. That's not, I'm caught in a loop. Here they are. These are the built-ins, and there's not many of them. See, they fit right on screen. drink this in. Just, you don't have to know what much of it means, but just drink it in, that everything that is so important that it needs to be in memory all the time at your fingertips is here in the Python built-ins. It's your first set of Swiss Army knife blades. You might want to drill down and learn about each of them, at least in the abstract. Some of these I never use, so you don't need to know everything. But it is worth pointing out that this hash function is among them. And this hash function is the building block that other things are built on that have much computer science, years of competitive optimization to make name value pair lookups fast. So the channeling, the folks need to know that the following are all the same. Name value pairs, key value pairs, other things. I don't know. You'll hear NoSQL versus SQL. There's so many ways of saying it, and you'll hear lots of different ways of saying it, but it's Python dictionaries. We might also add JavaScript object notation, JSON. Now, it's worth pointing out that these things can be nested. The key can be pointing to a value, which is another key value pair, which is oftentimes seen in JavaScript object notation, a lot of use of those curly brackets there. And so once you understand that all these different things people refer to as name value pair, key value pair, NoSQL, Python dictionaries, JSON, is all basically the same thing, you can start to internalize that it is super duper fast. Really fast, faster than your imagination would lead you to indicate, to the point where looking up the values out of lists of billions of keys, trillions of keys, is still blazingly fast. It has to do with hierarchical index creation. You never have to look more than halfway. Therefore, you can deconstruct a lookup tree so that you can guarantee in a deterministic fashion that even the longest searches will be within a known period of time. It's just astounding. So it's a good idea. All right, so is this SEO? Yeah, this is SEO. All right. So the next thing in the channeling is that Python dictionaries are just a bit less than a database because they don't last. They poof. I can make this performance art, right? We gotta fix the poof. It's easier than you think, but very Pythonic. Thus, weird to the new eye. There's deep Python specific nuance you're about to be exposed to. Specifically, renaming package component on import for usability. Even before that, pip installing a package that should be in the standard library. That means shipped with Python, but isn't. And nobody knows what I'm talking about. You're like, oh, he's talking about requests, right? All right. That package, it's weird. That's going to be weird to pip install, is going to have to be weirdly renamed to become usable. So we are making odd naming conventions usable. Overriding APIs, application program interfaces. We're improving the interface to things. And the last thing you need to know is we are using a context manager. A context manager that eliminates tons of, frustrating extra code. Frustrating extra code that would need to be added if Python didn't have the context manager. And then finally, just so that you have a little bit of specifics, because that's so friggin' abstract, you know you're seeing the context manager whenever you see with. That's it. That's it. Whenever you see with, you know you're using the context manager. Still is not going to make a lot of sense to you, but let's do it. Let's bring this thing home. We're going to make that dictionary persistent. So I have a keyboard shortcut in Jupyter, which is the same thing as doing kernel, restart kernel, and clear all outputs. You can see it's showing Control-Shift-R. I need to have my cursor inside a box for that to work. If it was out here, it wouldn't work. And that's my defense against accidentally not refreshing the screen, because Control-R could do a full reload. In fact, I'm going to show you that. If I just do a Control-R out there, it says, do you want to leave or stay, right? So I'm going to show you this. I'm going to leave, which is basically going to reload the whole Jupyter environment, but I'm not going to lose anything because Jupyter is always saving that stuff magically in the background. The browser is just a portal to a formal Python environment, which is represented by the concept of kernels. I have 3 separate instances of the formal python.exe from python.org. This might look weird, but the Jupyter organization, Project Jupyter, goes to some pretty considerable lengths to make sure that everything you're learning and doing is completely compatible with plain vanilla reference implementation of Python, because Python is free and open source, and there are many Python EXEs. There's PyPy, which is a different PyPy from the pypy.org, which is pip install. There's so many weird nuances, and it just has to come in time. I hate that there's stateful inside knowledge, but there's stateful inside knowledge, and you're just going to have to get it over time. But suffice to say, see, Control-Shift-R isn't even working for me. My keyboard shortcut stopped working after doing that. So they're working out different bugs. Oh, it's even ghosted some of those options. So that full reload was potentially not a good thing. Let's go over here and double click on that. Try running this first one. Oh, it's all ghosted. See, that reload was not good for me. So nothing. This is Charlie Brown landing on his back, getting up, trying again. But you got to communicate clearly with Lucy. I expect my whole environment to be reinitialized as it was left off, which, again, the Project Jupiter people have tended to this very well, very well. Jupiter Lab standalone edition on your desktop, Jupiter Lab Desktop, as they call it, is your friend, And it's your main SEO tool. So says a confirmed Vim head. All right, so now these things should execute. See, everything's good. And even though I have 3 tabs showing, we can check what kernels are loaded. Oh, it loaded all the kernels back into memory. You can shut down individual kernels. You can close individual tabs. But after it comes back, all the tabs that were open when you quit are loaded back into memory. So we'll get that much back in memory. We'll get rid of the Hello World example. And without further ado, we will show you how to pip install SQLite dict. SQLite dict. See that? That's not that hard. Run. Now you will see that the criteria, whatever, the requirements have already been met. It's going to say you already have it, right? Requirement already satisfied. And warning, there was an error checking the latest version of pip. That's fine. It's because I'm running in non-admin mode. So another way this can be run is this, telling it that you're definitely not trying to run in admin mode. That is a Jupiter magic. Oh, you get the same warning. Okay, I'm sort of getting a feel for the new, the latest version of this stuff. It's locked down a little bit tighter. But pip installs can be run with or without the parenthesis in front of it, but it only has to be done once. But that is so important. You must do this to sprinkle the magic fairy dust onto your machine. The following line is worth $1 million. Now, I guess this warrants a little bit of explaining. Python ships with SQLite 3. SQLite 3 is a free and open source, parentheses FOSS, SQL database. SQL, spelled SQL, but pronounced SEQUEL, is a row and column database. It's a row and column database, like spreadsheets. I don't need to bullet point anything. It's like spreadsheets. Tabs in a spreadsheet are tables in SQL. Okay? You gotta just absorb that fact. It's like so fundamental to so many things. That's exactly the environment I'm telling you to avoid at first pass on data collection. Okay, so why use it? Row and column systems, also known as relational database management systems, RDBMS, can be used as key value systems by using just 2 columns. The first column is the key column, And the second column is the row column. It's the shell game. It's trickery. A SQL product out there called Postgres uses this, and I'll turn off spell, uses this to great effect, competing with NoSQL systems like MongoDB, CouchDB, Redis, Berkeley, etc. So Postgres is SQL, by the way. So this trick can turn row and column systems into key value pair systems. And that's what we're doing with this library. This package here turns the Python's built-in SQLite 3 product into a key value system, which means we can make this dictionary persistent. That's where we're going with this. Well, this is where I check if people are still with me and stuff, because I'm getting paranoid about that I'm losing people. Look, this is actually quite interesting. All right. So this is it. This is what we're leading up to. This is the basic building block. This is what everything else relies on. This is what starts your career in SEO. There are many commercial products that will do this. You'll be able to do it with a few magical incantations. The first magical incantation goes from SQLite, SQL, SQLite dict, import SQLite dict as SQL dict. Boom. Oh, I got it wrong. No module named SQLite dict. So I did the pip install. SQLite dict, I'm sure I did. This is where I look at my documentation for ML SEO, because this is the magical. Oh, it's all lowercase. I got it wrong. I got it reversed. Not terrible, not too terrible. So like if you wanted to get a heads up on where I'm going with this, you can look at the documentation for ML SEO, because, you know, I preach it there, I preach it here. So it's all lowercase in the main package name. And in the importable item, it's got a capital S and a capital D. Don't ask me why. Convention. 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 Packages that you import are all lowercase. The subcomponents of packages use the very unPythonic, but still apparently part of the convention, camel case with an initial uppercase. That might be Hungarian notation. I'm not sure what the names of these things are. But you now have something that has a usable API with open. It's not with open. That's my old habits. With SQL dict foo.db as my old habits is to do FH for file handle, but you're not going to use that, or the more explicit file handle, so I really know I'm looking at a file handle. What you need to know is it represents real hardware. When you do with, when you're seeing the with keyword, think real hardware. Something's right into a file. Something is, you know, right into something that represents a file. It might be someone else's API. But for right now, it's going to be a file, it's going to be plopped right on the database, right there with that untitled PY. You're going to see it appear here in a second. But it's a dictionary name. The dictionary name represents real hardware. Thus, a file write will occur, and thus it will persist. It requires a colon. DB square open bracket, because it's a dictionary. Remember, that's the API for dictionaries, adict. We're doing the same thing as we're doing here. I don't want to confuse you with using foo and bar as the key value pairs when the database name is foo. So we will use the very Pythonic spam equals eggs. Now, running that will create the file, but I will give you the extra little bit of knowledge that with these file system type things, there's oftentimes an explicit commit. There has to be an explicit commit when you're using this package with the context manager. Because I'm using this with I must db.commit for it to actually become persistent. Otherwise, it happens in memory and doesn't synchronize it between the two. Run it. You saw the file appear, foo.db. All right. Now I'm going to go kernel, restart kernel, and clear all outputs. You will remember that if I tried to show the contents of adict here, not going to work. Dictionaries are not persistent. Now I'm going to reverse the process here with SQL dict, with that, the same opening line, for key, for keys, plural. No, it's for key in DB, because on each iteration, it will only be one key. Print key. Oh, I gotta still import this. I can't get away from importing that. Spam. Spam is the key. But what about the value? Well, you can't have a key value pair without a key going into a value. So we will print DB square bracket, putting the key in. Boom. If you wanted to make it slightly more efficient by putting it on one line, we could take this here, and we could put it on that same line and get rid of that print statement. Spam eggs. All right. So print will take comma values in between different things you want to print next to each other. That's really nice. Not bad, right? Now you will notice if you look at these numbers, I have only so far attempted to run this one, showing you that it's not initialized. I have only run the importing of that dictionary, that package, and then I have only run stepping through the dictionary to show the contents. So this is actually pretty amazing. It's a persistent dictionary. It might take you a while looking at it to understand that I didn't initialize spam and eggs. That initialization of the value was in this thing that has not been rerun in this session. That's important. That's maybe the most important thing to know here. As you look at this and absorb what's going on, take note of the fact that in this thing here, that is just stepping through the contents of a file we created locally, looking at each key, it has at its disposal values that were plugged in, a key value pair that was plugged in but not run in this session. I could delete this, I could get rid of this, and this would still show you spam and eggs. Now, I'll show you one more Python trick here, because you might want to put a colon saying spam colon eggs, or say key spam equals value eggs, or some other kind of formatting. The easiest way to do that, all right, is to put the whole thing in quotes. I'll use double quotes by convention. I tend to use single quotes because they're just a little bit faster to type, but people are more used to looking at it in double quotes. Now, That's not quite enough because we take the comma out and then we put curly brackets around each of these. And notice there's no special color coding going on with those. It still looks like strings, but now we're going to turn it into what Python and many languages call an F string by putting the letter F before it. And notice the color coding changes. Jupyter Lab understands the syntax and knows you're using an F string. It's going to show the same exact thing, but now because it's an F string, you can, outside the curly brackets, use string things, spam, colon, eggs. The key value is, and the value is, so key value is stupid because value is what's used over there. The key is key, and the value is plugging the key into the dictionary. The key is spam, and the value is eggs. Boom! Persistence of dictionaries in Python. The world opens up to you. And I'm going to do probably a fast little thing that brings it back to this, how does that relate, Mike, to what you were showing with this website where the title tag is set wrong? Well, the HTML that consists of this page is accessible through View Source. That's this tab that's still open. This is what you want locally. This is what you want as the value of your key value pairs. This and more, in fact. There's response headers. There's invisible stuff that doesn't show in View Source. And that can be plugged into a value just as easily as anything else. But how to get that? How to get at that in the first place? So there's a lot to look at here, including our educational stuff. But we don't need that. You know this stuff. We don't need that. This is good. We'll put a few comments in there. We write the data. And we read the data. Symmetrical process, write, read. I can put it back in there. And one of the attributes of key value pairs is automatic deduplication. There is not going to be multiple entries because there can only be one entry that has, spam as the key. So we'll do another one. How do you spell parrot? Parrot is 1 or 2 R's. 2 R's, okay. Parrot. Alive. The key is spam and the value is eggs. The key is parrot and the value is alive. If I tried to put 2 parrots that are alive in there, it's still going to be just the one entry. See? Key value pairs. No, you can't have duplicate keys. That's just naturally built into all this hash algorithm stuff that I was telling you about earlier. The uniqueness of the key is critical to the speed and data integrity of the lookup. This is also equivalent to the primary key concept in other database systems. Relational database management systems, RDBMS systems, oftentimes enforce the use of a primary key so that there is at least one column in your database that ensures uniqueness between record 1 and record 2 and record 3. And in Python dictionaries, it's the key of the dictionary. And the API that connects it to SQLite in the background is abiding by that. It uses a similar concept. The two concepts map together and live very well together. You with me so far? It's not a lot of code. All these times I executed it is maybe a little misleading. I restart the kernel, run all cells, and it just zips through it. This executes 1, this executes 2, this executes 3. Everyone with me? Because the next step, We're going to fetch the data from the web. We're going to do a quick crawl. One-page crawl. We're not even going to do it's too much to write a big crawler. We'll work towards that if there's interest in this. So is there interest? Say, yes, Mike, we're interested. We're here and we're watching, and you should do installment number 2. Not bad, not bad. All right. Yeah. This is really reductionist. This is a, reductionist approach to SEO. And my message to you in this reductionist approach to SEO is that persistent key value pairs, persistent dictionaries, persistent Python dictionaries are step 1 in every task. Consequently, they're the most important thing to know about Python SEO. Now, as Otto pointed out earlier, there's much more specific domain knowledge of SEO that has a lot to do with the title tag. And I showed you the lining up the crosshairs and how profoundly I line up the crosshairs in the old, way that SEO is done. That's always lurking underneath, putting the anchor tag, the targeted term in the title tag, which it's not. That's what I'm fixing. What's most broken? My system is not putting it in there correctly. In the URL, it is in the URL. In a headline or headline-like element, certainly is. And in links leading to the page, off page. So here it is. Want to learn SEO and earn big? It's leading to the page. If we go to the blog page, want to learn SEO and learn big? That's 2 locations. As soon as there's an article after it, it'll be 3 locations that have the targeted text in the anchor text of an Ahref leading to the page. There's the 3 crosshairs. So there's your $1 million SEO tip, right? There's 4 crosshairs. Title tag, headline-like element, URL of the page, and those are all on-page criteria, and then other pages leading back to this page using the targeted text in the anchor area of an Ahref tag, which is what I showed you earlier. Up here, I actually gave you a fairly literal example. Somewhere, I don't know. There it is. Okay, so hey there, Celtic Orthodox prayer. Looking good, bro. Thank you very much. It's great to see, return visitors. I've been seeing Celtic Orthodox prayer. I think you might go back to Hittail. Your handle, if it's not someone I know from back in those days, it's close to it. But anyway, I'm glad you're here in either case. All right. The deep breath before hitting this session home, and then we'll wrap it up because it's a fair amount of material we covered. You fetch it from the page and use the key values there. It is nice and fun and important to note there's no file lock on this. I can delete that foo very freely, so you don't have the tech liability overhead of a real SQL system. There's a lot of ways to go about this, and all those other databases I mentioned, Redis, what else? These other things, Mongo and Couch, and other things you could be running local to do database work with a lot of extra overhead. It's just, washed away when you use SQLite. Now, SQLite doesn't scale as big and fit as many problem domains as those other databases I mentioned. But for this kind of work, it's more than adequate, actually incredibly optimized from a C, because it's not written in Python. SQLite, the SQLite engine that's being used in Python, is along the same lines as the regular expression engine that's used in Python, but whose popularity was created by being used in Perl ages and ages ago. You're talking the 80s, the 90s. I don't know, whenever Perl was invented, they put the regular expression engine, which was apparently part of the free and open source, into Perl, and then every other language that wanted regular expressions did the same thing. They embedded the optimized best of breed into the language. Free and open source regex engine into free and open source language. SQLite is the same thing. It's a gift that comes from other worlds and is put into the Python language, and therefore has all the optimization and years of work that were put into such things. Anyway, one external library that needs to be imported. Import requests. Everyone following probably knew I was working up to that. It's plural. And requests has a function called get. Dir requests. We can look inside of requests to see what's inside of there. There's all this stuff. But of the stuff that's in there, the one that we care about most is get. Request.get URL. Bam, response 200. Well, you can't use it. Well, perhaps we should make a handle to it. Resp for response. Response equals request.get some URL. Okay, now it's invisible, but it's Jupyter, so that's sitting there. It's like frozen, suspended in time. In case you don't know, what's going on here is, people would call it a REPL environment in the past, but it just doesn't do justice. What? Even when you spell it out as a read eval print loop, just doesn't make sense. People don't get it. So it's exploratory program. Exploratory programming. And for the people who really need to know that extra little bit, it freezes the execution until you unfreeze it. And everything is kept in memory. Until you restart kernel. Okay, that makes sense, right? It's a weird, awesome environment. So that means that when you create a new cell, resp is sitting there. Resp is something that you can look inside of with a dir, just like I looked inside of the object that created resp. And it has stuff. Forget the double underscore stuff. They're called dunders. These dunderheads created double underscores, dunderheads. That would be Guido. It's okay to call him that. You call Linus a git, you call Guido a dunderhead, all right? They'll appreciate the humor. Inside of here is all the stuff you can look at having to do with a page. Oh, there's one called text. Does that mean we can go resp.text? Well, you certainly can. It's showing it in a very encoded way. And if you would like to see it in a less encoded way, then you use the print function around it. That does the decoding so that you get a similar appearance as to what is in the view source over here. Starting to get familiar, starting to feel like SEO. Oh yeah, last step of making it persistent. We write the data. What do you use for the key? If you're using the view source plus, I'm going to get everything. What would you use as the key there? Well, first it's out of sequence, so I'm going to undo that, get it back to the primary example. I'll put it in sequence so that it is not bad practice from a Jupyter standpoint. This is how Jupyter gets much maligned, because people start putting things out of sequence like I was just about to do. I deleted the database, so let's call the database crawl. Start calling things exactly what they are, crawl. And if resp, the result of this crawl, here's the crawl. That's right there is the crawl. All this is just documentation. You won't believe how easy this all starts to look when I get rid of the extra stuff that I've been putting in there just to show you stuff. How truly few lines of code it takes to crawl a database, or to crawl a website and to make it persistent for later evaluation, right? So we're just about staged here, but not quite, because you need to know that the best key to use when having crawled a site is the URL that the crawl is for. URL equals that string. And now this thing that fetches the text can actually use URL here. And then we can put it in a more logical order so that it doesn't make your eyes cross trying to figure out what's going on. And I like it big, and I like getting rid of that, except you're not going to see the database appear. So this is almost more like it. All right. That's not bad. That's not bad to get the overview of what's going on, but I do want this showing so that you'll see the crawl database appear in a second. Now, I hope you anticipated it. If you didn't, learn to anticipate this stuff. URL is the key. The angels are singing. Crawl.db got created. That's persistent, my friends. Restart the kernel. I just wiped everything. Resp is not in memory anymore. Resp is gone. Can I get my crawl data back? You bet. We just reverse the process. For key in DB. Print key. Oh, SQL dict not defined. I got to remember to import the library. You can't get away from all housekeeping. There's printing the URL, but where's the data? Well, we don't want to print the data in a loop. That's a little bit big to print in a loop. So instead of printing the key, we'll set data equal to, well, let's make it symmetrical. Resp equals, and remember how resp was not defined up there? We'll just set the stage. Before and after. Resp is still not defined, and this is going to be without a crawl. Resp equals db with the key plugged in. Now the data is there. You could see the text. You could see the URL. Not to be confused with a piece of data that is the key there. It happens to also have the URL inside of it. You could see the status code of the page. Was a successful 200. And with the functions that come from, ML SEO, which I'm not even going to get to, but it's from ML SEO, import star. It does a lot. It imports a lot. It's dumping a lot into the global space here. There's a lot I'm going to cover in the future follow-on things. But once it's in hand, I mean, you could follow the instructions here. It has nothing to do with what we're about to do. But there's the rabbit. You can start to chase the rabbit. Yeah, next step, run look. So, I got a Alice's Adventures in Wonderland complex, like so many people do. My old college professor who does those reversible logos had bitten by the same bug. It relates to so many things. I actually prefer Dorothy's Adventures in Oz, but we'll get to that. The important thing here is that there's a bunch of functions that can be used on this RESP object, such as extract title, attribute bigger, right? Response object has no attribute decode. Yeah, that's because you don't do it on the response object directly. You do it on the text object inside of it. And there's the title tag. See that? And this sets the stage for the next lesson, right? Because, now you can step through and pull out the meta description, extract meta, And you can go and start extracting all the different things and start doing page analysis, on-page analysis, if you crawl multiple pages, off-page analysis, all that kind of stuff, right? And we will be chasing the rabbit. This is SEO. This is Python SEO. My library is in very early stage. Consider it jumping onto a beta. That is why whenever you pip install it, you must pip install it with -U, capital U, ML SEO, because it's going to be improving. There's a lot of stuff that's broken about it, but you know, you're getting in early and you're getting in on the adventure. It eliminates the need to buy a lot of commercial SEO software. Anywho, URL could be a dictionary. Yes, that's right. So that you heard the angels singing, Otto von Bismarck. URL means, and I might get it a little bit wrong, but it's along the lines of unique resource locator. Emphasis on unique. That's key. Oh, nerd jokes. URLs make perfect keys in key value pair systems. SQLite that comes with Python is a unspeakably big gift. Manna from the sky. To do a light touch that turns SQLite from RDBMS, which you'll remember is rows and columns, to key value is pure magic. The fact it uses the Python Dict API, application program interface, is magic squared. The only concession to be made is some magic incantations. You can't get away from cryptic, annoying magic incantations. First, you have to pip install SQL SQL SQLite dict, and then this must go in your Python code, right? So there's, I don't even know how to format that. I guess that should be a bulleted list, because that will be like, of course, that's not exactly how it goes in your Python code. But, you know, these are your concessions. The other concession is with open. It's not with open, it's with SQL dict file name .db. That's arbitrary, the DB, but it's good by convention as DB. I mean, it's like I'm reproducing the whole thing. And then the other thing is that you have to do a db.commit is necessary, unlike a vanilla plain. There's foreign, there's non-English speakers. I'll try and keep my idioms out, but unlike a plain dict. And the point here is that you must understand the Python context manager. There's a lot of magic going on in that with thing, because, you know, in fact, this is complicating it too much. What I really want to say, the concession is you must understand the Python context manager. Whoops. You must understand the Python context manager. And in parentheses, whenever you see with, And there's a very special kind of magic going on there, which I should venture into a little bit more later, because this code looks so simple. Now if I get out the sample code from our learnings, I put the imports both in the same box, and we set the URL, and we do the request, and we get rid of the showing of the gratuitous showing of these things. And we didn't really need ML SEO for this. And the extraction, pip install might be interesting to show at the beginning of the process, because no, not really. The pip install at the beginning of the process would be, for this code, it would be SQLite dict. And yeah, restart kernel and everything. So it's this much code, Let me put my power into my laptop. My screen just got dim. I don't want it to affect streaming going into low power mode or anything. And then I'm going to check for your feedback and stuff. I'm going to answer any questions you have. Let it be on anything. It doesn't have to be on this SEO stuff at all. You know, most of the stuff I showed here is really not that specific to SEO, but it is the best generic piece of insider knowledge in the whole Python world. Persistent dictionaries should be part of the standard library. There's no reason they shouldn't be. What's being done in this very lightweight third-party pip installable package is nothing, yet so much. And when I say PyPy in regard to pip install, one must know that pypi.org is the organization that manages, and I believe it's now been wrapped into the same organization as python.org. If not the same organization, they're very close together. 377,000 projects, 3,491 releases, 6 million files, over, you know, almost over half a million users. Okay, so ML SEO is one of these packages, but then everything else in the third party is also here. Yeah, there it goes. And this is my library. You'll see the little rabbit here, just right, the same way it's on the GitHub page. Many times things that are in PyPy are in GitHub. So anything that's pip installable, you'll find it on this site, pypi.org. Python Packaging Index is what it stands for. There's my little rabbit. And all this stuff, all this documentation and stuff is coming not from .py files, not from markdown files. It's coming from Jupyter Notebooks. That's this core for the package. This is where I maintain ML SEO. This is where you're going to find things like those extract links, extract title is all going to be in here. Extract meta, extract title, right? This is the code that does it, right? And I write it even though I'm a Vim head, I write it in Jupyter. And the documentation is living here. This is where I wrote the rabbit. This is where I pasted the rabbit in the first place. This is how I made the rabbit. I did some Figlet stuff. I composed it in here. And when I execute that, it's Markdown. And so how does that become a Python package? It's because of something called nbdev, which I guess I'll get to in future videos. It's not an SEO topic. It's a developer topic. It's something that promotes Jupyter Lab into a full-fledged development package, as legit as VS Code or anything else out there. So, yeah. Gotta go do work. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. SQLite is better. Oh, so there was stuff that I should have been answering. I'm sorry. And yeah, so Celtic had already go. His answer, though, SQLite is better than MS Access. Yeah, I can tell that Celtic Orthodox Prayer really comes from a Microsoft background. A lot of the questions he's been asking lately, is it better than PowerShell and stuff? You've been sold a bill of goods, my friend. The generic Unix, Linux world and free and open source world is across the board better than the Microsoft world, with the exception of the polish of user interfaces and the support you might get, stuff like that. But yeah, SQLite is better than Microsoft Access by worlds. May not be better than, say, SQL Server, because SQL Server is an enterprise product that has to, meet all the rigor of production, mission critical stuff. SQLite is used for like the thumbnail databases on your iPhone. That's production, that's mission critical, but it's not supporting as many simultaneous users, for example. So I know you had to go eat or whatever, so you didn't hear that answer, but hopefully you see it in the playback. And then Otto says, URL, yeah, that you anticipated it, so I went past that. And then that last one, does adding pictures, video to a page influence its page rank? Do they rate a pure text page as boring or not interesting enough for the general public? Yes. Plain text pages are boring and will not get as much. I don't know if you can call it page rank anymore, but there are really magical combinations of things that people like and the machines like. The people like it, the machines like it. And even though, optimizing on my name, Mike Levin, is really hard because there's this congressman now in California who has my name. And being a congressman is a really great path to SEO. But I keep irons in the fire. One of the irons I keep in the fire, well, is keywords. I do lots of different things. If I just do finger trick, I doubt I'll be that good. Finger trick. 2 words like that. Sometimes maybe, sometimes not. So hard to be there. Yeah, I'm not on the first page anymore for finger trick. But if you put that 3rd keyword, removable finger trick, you will find I am this video right here. That's on YouTube. Okay, so is that really SEO if they're leading you to the YouTubes? Well, they're up. Oh my goodness, that's up in Pinterest. Someone must have pinned me. It might have got thrown off because of that title tag problem. I might have been losing a position, but I'm still there. You're going to see the title tag problem when I drill down on the page. But here I am in Google, or that's Google Videos. So I am here. And this is in private. This is private mode, so it's not being customized on knowing who I am. I'm in this position. All right, that looks good. Reconnection successful. Let me check the web page. Live streaming, that's looking good. Okay, it's still streaming. All right, good. So to hit that question home, the reason I'm performing so well is because a full human article, a human touching article that also has the YouTube video embedded into it has these different things reinforcing each other. So you can see the title tag is thrown off. It's amazing. I'm still on page 1 for removable finger trick with the title tag thrown off. I've got to fix that. This is what's most broken. I was actually considering fixing this problem in the course of this video, but I would have been jumping into the Jekyll template system, and it would have been just too confusing for this early stage. But yeah, there's a lot of things reinforcing each other. Now, this might just be a plain ugly text page, but it's a plain ugly text page with the story of my mailman who taught me this growing up, and me never forgetting it, with a quote about his passing and tiny moments in life that make a difference, and the YouTube video embedded into it.
Satisfy your culinary curiosity with the new chalupas at
that
Wawa.
Doesn't throw off monetization. Because it's anonymous mode, the ads ran. But here I am in YouTube now, where there is an article, not an article, where there is the video, where the video is hosted, and it's linking back to my article, you'll notice, with a little bit of description there that they can drill down and, not that many words, but all this stuff crisscross reinforces each other. It's not merely embedding other stuff in. it's, embedding other stuff in that engages, seizes them, engages, electrifies, excites, satisfies, and otherwise delights the person who risked so much clicking that link. Don't let them down. Don't let them down. Don't let them down. Satisfy them. And the best way to satisfy them is to have good images, good various media content that reinforces more than just text, but good text that tells a human story or gets to the point in a way that no other page is. It should be the best page on the internet on that topic. Honestly, it should be the very best page on the topic you're targeting. The best page on the entire internet on the topic you're targeting. Otherwise, are you really even sincere? What new are you adding to the conversation? If not the best page, then add something new that nobody else in the world has ever added to that topic / discussion. It's hard to make that point, but that's really what you're doing. Yeah, I'm on a good first page for Linux ThinkBook, but I'm still not very popular. Okay, so these are future topics, right? The reason you're not very popular is because there's not a lot of search volume. So one of the basic tenets of search is that search is where search is. Top positions where there is no search is meaningless in real terms, except for practice. Use the ability to get position 1 on terms you know for a fact have some decent, satisfying, sufficient, doesn't even need to be that much, sufficient search numbers. Get a percentage of that traffic. And then, we SEOs, we can't avoid metaphors, then start swimming upstream. Expand the opening. So foot in the door. Get a foot in the door and expand the opening. So I would say to you, just choose something a little bit more competitive than, Linux ThinkBook. Linux on Lenovo. Yeah, well, ThinkBook is a Lenovo desktop model. Nobody knows that. Yeah, Lenovo is popular. The word Lenovo is probably quite popular in search. So, Linux on Lenovos, Lenovo Linux, is probably a perfect term to target. I'm tempted to go but there are no buts. Lenovo Linux, Linux Lenovo, it probably isn't very competitive. Get familiar with the search terms that exist there. Lenovo, Linux. The search, I mean the competitors. You just look at it. Who are you in competition with? So first of all, is it so dominated by the manufacturer and Wikipedia that there's no opening? Yeah, look at this. It's Lenovo straight down. That's a problem. And then after Lenovo, it's Amazon, then it's videos. And the first opening, the first non-Lenovo and non-Amazon thing is boilingsteam.com. So this is the first thing to know. Now, there's other aspects of SEO, right? You can get in through search, through paid search. You could get in through paid search again, product search. There's different names for this. There's videos coming up, right? So the things reinforcing each other. A page where you have created a video where the page is embedded, where the video is embedded in the page, you get that double crisscross verification going. Okay, so Lenovo think this person is, you're just in a low volume thing, low volume and high competition because of Lenovo's presence. This would be like a session. You would list all the keywords, you'd ideate the keywords, and then you'd test all these different keywords and look at what the search results look like there and find where your opening is. And then where you see the opening, then you make that your target keyword. So I kind of jumped right to having target keywords, but it sounds like you're doing good practice. The practice part of it actually is important. If you can't get the top position where there's no search volume, you'll never get the top position where there is search volume and competition. So you've taken that necessary first step. That's great, really. Okay. I hope this was good for folks. I'm not in a hurry to get off. If you wanted to have follow-up questions or whatever, it seems to be Otto today. You're my person today. Don't feel the obligation because I could wrap up. I've got some nice putrefied mammalian secretions for my protein here that I've been sort of waiting to get to. The Stinky Aged Asiago. Highly recommended. Yummy, yummy. And my cream soda. I eat healthy, dairy and sugar. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. I'll take a look, see how many people are with me on the stream. If there's still a lot of people, yeah, looks like people are checking out. But there have been 23, and this has been going on for a while. I'm quite pleased, Good sign of things to come. Right after work stops, get a little food, go streaming a bit, and this is because I have the opportunity, I have the motivation and the opportunity, I have the move coming up. I'm going to be fairly distracted by that move. But in the meantime, I'll try and get some of these out and build one on the other. Hey, I got 5 likes in this very short period of time. So if you want me to stay, I'm missing chips. Oh yeah, fish and chips or cheese and chips. Yeah. I need some carbs. I hate to say it, but I have these black and white cookies here for carbs. The black and white cookies. Those are my carbs right now. And for a little natural sugar, I've got my blueberries right here. So blueberries are very important. You got your antioxidants. You go for brightly colored or dark colored fruit. Scrub your blood. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to Google Otto von Bismarck right here. So it's not just me doing the research, but I'll do the research for everything. It's for everyone watching. It's a World War II battleship you told me about, and I really should know about it. I'll put a space there, even though you don't do that in your name. I'll go to that Wikipedia page. It comes up. And you tell me it has a movie for it. I'll probably check out the movie. Oh, he's a duke. Conservative German statesman and diplomat. Rose in Prussian politics. Masterminded the unification of Germany. Served as the first chancellor until 1890. I need a bigger font. Is this the right guy? You mentioned a World War. Oh, it was the World War II ship was named after him. So this is the guy who it was named after. So this is the guy who unified Germany. Okay, so that's the first part of what you want me to make sure I know. But then there's a battleship from World War II. And there's the Wikipedia page on that. The first of two of that class built for them named after the guy I was just reading about. Ship was laid down then, launched February, completed August, commissioned during fleet. Had a sister ship. Largest battleships ever built for Germany. Largest ever built by any European power. In the course of its career, conducted only one operation, lasted 8 days, codenamed that. The ship with a heavy cruiser was to break into the Atlantic Ocean and raid Allied shipping from North America to Great Britain. This was to bring the offensive into the Allied, to the Atlantic, I see. 2 ships were detected several times off Scandinavia. British naval units were deployed to block their route. At the Battle of Denmark Strait, the battle initially engaged, probably by mistake, the ensuing battle hood was destroyed by the combined fire of Bismarck and this other one, which then damaged Prince of Wales and forced her retreat. Bismarck suffered damage from 3 hits. Destruction of Hood spurred a relentless pursuit. And this is where the drama of the movie comes in. So the destruction of the Hood spurred a relentless pursuit by the Royal Navy involving dozens of warships. 2 days later, heading for occupied France to effect repairs, Bismarck was attacked by 16 bombers. 1 scored a hit, made its steering inoperable, and it was crippled. And when it was crippled, it was engaged by 2 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, sustained more damage, heavy loss of life. The ship was scuttled to prevent her being boarded by this. So it got away after all this damage. The British didn't board it. And to allow the ship to be abandoned so as to limit further casualties, most experts agree that the battle damage would have caused her to sink eventually. Oh, and then the wreck was located fairly recently and has since been further surveyed. Oh, so there's probably some interesting footage of going down there. This is like raising the Titanic, not raising it, but this is like visiting the Titanic type of stuff. A lot of history. Okay, the characteristics, service history. Yeah, that's fascinating. It sounds like a very dramatic event. Good stuff for a movie. I'll check it out. Instapaper that, and check back. The movie's on YouTube. I will check it out. Oh, a History Channel documentary. Okay, many movies. And well, you got my interest. I'm not that much into history. You know who I like? I like Dan Carlin, hardcore history. When I can take history, it's from Dan Carlin. I mean, I don't even think I have to type in the hardcore history. He's popular enough. If you don't know him, he's one of the best storytellers out there in the podcasting community. And a lot of his stuff is free. There's some stuff he charges for, but a lot of it's free and just fascinating takes on history. A lot of the stuff that most people kind of skip over and sort of brush under the carpet, if you will. He gets into that. He likes those gory little details. Let's see if he has the Otto von Bismarck. Maybe I'll learn about it from him. Nope. There might be other spellings. I'll just do Bismarck. Make sure there's no spaces. It's all Bismarck. 189. Yeah, I'll check these out. Maybe there's something about it in there, and I'll hear about it from him as well. Yeah, good guy, good guy. I mean, it's American. I most of the stuff I know is English speakers and stuff. I don't speak any other foreign languages, so I'm probably cut off from a lot of good stuff out there. But he's a good one. Yeah, World War II history stuff from your 20s you read a lot of. Well, it's bigger than fiction. What happened in World War II is like comic book epic. I mean, when people are into like all this Thanos Marvel comic stuff, I'm like, real life is every bit as interesting. We had our Thanoses, we had our Peter Parkers. They might have not have been these galactic powers, but you know, ways of life were at stake. My people, the extermination of my people was at stake. And, the fact that, I mean, my favorite sub-story there is the story of Alan Turing and Albert Einstein. They're two parallel paths to ending the war in their own ways, and how much credit is attributed to Albert Einstein, but it was actually Alan Turing, the inventor of computers, who greatly put an end to the war by cracking the Enigma code. It's World War II is the story of computers and tech and, clash of worldviews and, the combining powers of worldviews. And the Amiga. Oh my God, right? Okay. Before 20 equals Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, me too. Maybe not up to my 20s, but certainly it was Dungeons and Dragons. Then it was comic books and the Amiga. So we have some parallel tracks there, my friend. Yeah, I mean, maybe it was just because of the times, but, not entirely. Two people drawn to the Amiga. Secret weapons are nice. Secret weapons that stay around over the decades are even better. See, the Amiga was a secret weapon, but it went away. Thankfully, many of its attributes came from Unix, which are very much present in Linux, and a lot of my Amiga know-how is in use every day today. Oh, and you worked at a comic book distributor, so you could read a lot of them. Yeah, Otto, you're endearing yourself more and more to me with every word. Are you a DC or a Marvel person? And don't mind me if I eat some cheese here while we, it's probably disgusting to eat while I stream, but I don't care. There's that whole F it attitude, right? You reach a point where it's like, you're already not doing what most YouTubers do, so why not go for broke? Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't mind the Marvel verse DC, yeah? I started out as a Marvel person. I thought DC was for kids, just like was the line that everyone gave you. And then Dark Knight, was his name Alan Moore or something? And so Dark Knight changed everything, and I became a DC fan as well after Dark Knight. And then yeah, I guess that's it. And then I ventured out. The Watchmen came along, so I looked at the independents, and then I lost loyalties and eventually lost interest in comics because I realized real world was just as interesting. But I was there for like the original Thanos story. I was big into Marvel when Thanos dating death and his existential crisis and his collecting of the Infinity Stones all played out for the first time in the comic books. So it comes along now, and I'm like, been there, done that. It's so many things, been there, done that I don't have interest. I don't have that much interest in augmented reality because I had the Mandela system on the Amiga. I had Mandela, the virtual reality, very vivid, and also had a video toaster in that same machine, which gave you a similar fix. Yeah, you love Watchmen. There's so much that's good about Watchmen, so much that was explored that you realize Marvel and DC could have explored about their equivalent characters. What they did with Dr. Manhattan was wonderful. When you have that much power, when you have Superman level powers, and your super hearing lets you hear everybody in danger around the world, how can you even go to sleep at night? Shouldn't you be using your super speed to just go out and rescue everybody that you hear? And if you're this heroic person with this moral code, isn't that going to eat away at you? And isn't that going to gradually turn into contempt for these fragile humans? And, you know, the Fortress of Solitude, the North Pole, isn't nearly far enough. You need to get your butt to another planet to have a little bit of solitude. Oh, something that you're sending that I can show. The movie could not describe her. Yeah, no, the book was much better than the movie. Let's see what you're trying to show me. Oh, okay. It didn't really do anything there, but that's cool. Oh, I get it. It was just the chat system was hiding something until I clicked show. Yeah. I know. I think there's even a TV series. So as much as I'm into the comics, these things that are close to my heart, like the Flash series comes out and Green Arrow comes out, and I just don't follow the TV series like almost at all, because starting with Smallville, I kind of saw it was just for, you know, the teens. It was the was that vampires and werewolves, Twilight or something. So, you know, any storyline can be cast so that it attracts just the, you know, young people who are going through, you know, puberty, and they're assured a certain, you know, audience. And, you know, the DC cartoon universe, maybe not the DC cinematic universe, but the DC cartoon universe with Cadmus and the space gun and Oliver, the Green Arrow, being like, yeah, I'm not part of this. This is wrong. You guys got a space gun. I'm not joining that. I mean, that was awesome. I really loved that. Amanda Waller, you know, and the raising of the alternate superheroes from the DNA. You know, it was great stories. It was just wonderfully written. How they developed Lex Luthor, how they had the different technologies from different aliens and nanotechnologies, and, you know, it was well done. I was super bummed that the DC cartoon universe had to end because Batman Beyond or something. Batman Beyond was pretty good. It was another Batman that came along where he was a young man, and because they wanted to keep reinventing, because they wanted to keep hitting the reset button and let the writers do what the writers want to do, which is fine. There's a lot to be said for creativity, but there's a lot to be said for well-developed continuity. So as bad as the DC universe became in cinema, it was that good in the cartoons. In fact, they started out good in cinema as well, but all the critics played pile on. All the critics put down Green Lantern. Who's that guy who played Green Lantern, who went on to be Spawn? Or not Spawn, see there, that's my Freudian slip. He went on to be Deadpool. Oh, the Deadpool versus Slade. How cool Slade was in the DC cinematic universe and Teen Titans. How they made Slade into this like evil Batman, and how almost nobody knows that that Slade character is what the mega popular Deadpool was based on, and how Marvel creatively copies DC. And, you know, the reinvention, it's like Linux versus Unix. Slade, Wade Wilson, I forget their names, it's something like that, was Unix by DC, who came first, who has this ivory tower. And then Marvel, who has a more lighthearted kind of free and open source attitude, creates Deadpool that is to DC's Slade what Linux is to Unix. And it's brilliant. And Deadpool becomes this big thing. You made your wife watch Deadpool last weekend and she liked it. Yeah, it's really surprising. So the actor is really surprising. So like actor who played Green Lantern, not Green Lantern, Green Lantern. Also the actor who plays Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, and he got a real bum rap because it was a really good movie. The Green Lantern movie was awesome. It was loyal to the comics. It was very satisfying. So it was a better movie of the comic than the Watchmen was to the comic. This hit a lot of the key points, and I thought it was acted well. It was just cliche and inaccessible, overly intellectual for the popular audience, but it was a great tragedy that the DC cinematic universe did not grow from out of this movie. They kind of tried to erase it and went much, much darker. And this guy, who was cast for that, was like, I can be a great superhero with things that no one thinks could be interpreted or done well in the movies. You know how much odds were stacked against Deadpool coming off well? Oh my God, the jokes that it opens with. Oh, it's awesome. It's great. And so is that guy. If you haven't seen this is something you should see. Ryan Reynolds, Devil, as the Devil. I know I'm misspelling it, but Google will step in for me. Watch these things on YouTube, his commercials where he plays the devil. It's wonderful, viral social media stuff. Him doing his thing again, demonstrating that, actors can be bigger than the characters that they play, and they can be the driving force of good interpretations that stay loyal to the original stuff. I mean, it's not all artists going off with artistic license. Sometimes it's artists who have a deep appreciation for the original source material. It was a great lesson. It was a great lesson for me. It was very humbling that an actor could do this 3 times or, whatever he did. Yeah, you're a huge fan of his. Yeah, everything about him. Yeah, I agree. He's just, fabulous. You know what he's like, the modern, in my mind. I mean, he's probably better. He has far surpassed it. But the guy, he passed recently, but who I have in my mind is game over. Game over, man. Oh, why isn't he the first position? Nuke the place from orbit. I'm not sure if he's even the one who said it, but you probably know Hicks. Is it Hicks? He was also in this Mormon polygamy TV show. He was also in Spy Kids. This is a great character. Game over, quote, aliens. That'll do it. Yeah, it was Hudson, and the actor is Bill Paxton, right? So Bill Paxton reminds me a lot of Reynolds, was his name? Yeah, Ryan Reynolds, was it? Great characters. He never did as much independent stuff, really breaking off, but kind of did, So Bill Paxton in the Mormon show. Big love. Definitely recommended. And Bill Paxton in Spy Kids. He played a great role there, running the this amusement park that had these terrifying rides. It was really brilliant. Oh, Reynolds is Canadian as well. Yeah. Very cool. Well, all the comedians, right? It's just packed full of the funny people and larger than life people. Did you know that William Shatner is starring in this TV show, What I Don't Know? What I Don't Know, I think it's called. And it was canceled. It had to be canceled. They froze production on it. Oh, I don't understand. things William Shatner doesn't understand. They had to freeze production on it because the people who bought that, the people who ordered the episodes and stuff, even though it's a completely non-political show, it's just William Shatner doing his thing as William Shatner does. The channel that it's on has been identified as a foreign infiltrator. It's the Russians. It's a Russian propaganda TV channel. So I don't understand with William Shatner. The latest stuff would probably show under Google News. I might need to switch over to news to really see what's going on. I don't understand Shatner. Guess it's not that big of news. This is the kind of nerdy stuff I know. But the show has been halted in production because the Russians own the channel that, signed him up to do the episodes. Another Canadian Jew, so doubly close to my heart. You got to keep feeding me, Otto, or I'm going to wrap up. Probably not a bad idea. Anyway, it's 8:47. I'll give you 1 minute, and I'm going to review my open windows, see if there's anything worth saying before I wrap up. You can see, how strongly I feel about this. Even in my ML SEO package, where I can do all kinds of great things, it's completely and I use HTTPX instead of the request library here, but it's completely my library stuff that I start out teaching people how to do. This is the magical incantation. This is the spell, This is what should be part of the Python standard library that isn't, because a persistent dictionary is cool. A persistent dictionary that has the optimization, the speed and performance of SQLite behind it, because I know it can be done with shelves, right? A lot of stuff what I'm doing, some people might say, oh, that could be done with shelves. Okay, you got to go soon too. So I'll just point out that what I showed today could be done with Python shelves, and underneath of that is pickles. But it would have been slow. Not appropriate at all for a large site crawl. So, that's the magic spell to do this high performance and actually be able to do fairly large jobs that are competitive with such tools as Screaming Frog or Deep Crawl, which are the alternative ways of doing this. In the future, I'll talk about using tuples as composite keys in this, and I have some things in my library to allow composite keys, primary keys that are built from multiple columns to ensure uniqueness, that include such things as dates. So I'll keep going on with this. I love this stuff. It feeds my soul. I'm one of the lucky people who really found my Ikagai, I-K-I-G-A-I, Ikagai. Did I get that right? I-K-I-G-A-I. And I go to images. And the Ikagai is the unification of what the world needs with what you're good at, with what you love and what you can get paid for. And that is your Ikagai in the center. For me, what the world needs. Does the world really need Linux, Python, Vim, and Git? What the world needs, and this is what I'll finally wrap up on, what the world needs is a cure to anxiety, groundlessness. I could go on. Existential crisis. Depression would fit in there. All the stuff that, plagues the youth, plagues of youth. And so I'm going to try and solve that by just teaching people Linux, Python, Vim, and Git at an early enough age. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll talk about that. It sounds like you're on a good track. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? I think you might have told me yesterday you were young. You might be 17, 19? Yeah, and you were wondering whether you found Vim too late. And I told you my Vim story, how I found Vim 15 years after I was introduced to it. And oh, you're 48. Okay, you're not the really young guy I met. Well, we're in the same category. I'm 51. It's never too late. It sounds like you got your stuff together pretty well, and it can be found in places where you've already built it up. If we go back to my personal journal, a very important concept in my personal journal is to release your already built up potential. You've already done it, right? You're there. You just don't know it. You've just got to release the already built up potential, connect some dots. Sometimes it's just by teaching what you already know. So anyway, yeah, I'll wrap up there on just reviewing these points. I read my poem a lot. I do my 3 metaphors for getting started with the day, but I don't talk about this a lot. And it changes. Use your powerful internal assets in creative new ways. Your assets should be internal. The way you use them are in creative and new ways. It's the magic combination. You have to replace distractions in your life. Now I sound preachy, do whatever you want, but generally replacing distractions with your life with love-worthy and righteous new things. They have to be both love-worthy. You gotta love it. If you don't love it, why are you doing it? And righteous, chasing that ikigai and having a feedback loop of, positive feedback, the right neurochemicals released in your body. So you want to do more, so you feel better about it. The love increases. And the same things that are like compounding interest in your finances should be compounding interest in the good neurochemicals that make you happy to be alive. And then, of course, the best way to learn is to teach. So always be teaching. And then, don't always start from the beginning. It's nice to feel like but you're never really starting from the beginning. Just find how to release your already built up potential. And that's pretty much it. I think that's a good place to stop. Well, thanks for joining me, especially you, Otto. And I'll let you go now, and I'll wrap up. And it's been a pleasure, as usual. And I'll do the second installment, where I might do an actual real crawl of a site, getting multiple pages, following links, more features that are in ML SEO, and maybe composite keys in this same key value trick, because tuples can be used in the key. Thanks. Good evening and goodbye.